Let's walk through how we can use GitHub Actions to build a really simple workflow. We are going to create a new repository on GitHub. So we'll just go to github.com and I'll just create it in my own personal account organization. Just going to call this example node app. And I'm going to just create this repository, nothing too crazy so far. Now it gives me instructions if I want to take a repository I have on my local machine and push it to GitHub. We'll come back to these instructions later. I'm going to go to Windows Terminal, and from here I'm going to go into my Downloads folder and create a new directory called Example Web App and open code in the context of that Example Web App directory. Now that I have this directory, I can initialize a Git repo, add files, do everything I need to do within Visual Studio Code. So we'll do just that. We will initialize a new Git repo. Then we're going to create our workflow file for GitHub Actions. So I'll create a new file. It's going to go in the GitHub folder /workflows, and I'll call this file automation.yaml. Once I create this file, I can start adding content to it, and you'll see that it shows up almost immediately in my source control tab. So we'll go, let's create a workflow that runs whenever we push code. So on push, I'll create a commit, add workflow, commit it. And then remember I said we have to go back and get our instructions. So I'll go get those instructions, push an existing repository for the command line. That sounds like what I wanted to do. So I'll copy those instructions, go back to the Windows terminal, cd into my example web app folder. I'm going to clear the screen to make things a little bit easier to follow. And I'm going to just paste those instructions. It's warning me, hey, you're pasting text from the internet. Are you sure? Yeah, that's fine. So we add our remote, we switch to main branch, and we're going to push that main branch to the remote named origin. So if I did everything correctly and I refresh, my repository should be up here on GitHub. Now if I go to GitHub Actions, I see that my add workflow has ran, my workflow ran because of the add workflow commit, but there's a red X, so that means it failed. Let's go look and see why it failed. It says, hey, we don't have any jobs defined. So I'll go define a job. So it looks like I need an array called jobs, and I can define a job in there. I think I'm going to call this job first job. Save it. Add a commit called add first job and push that commit from here to GitHub. And you'll see the spinning icon in Visual Studio Code indicating that synchronizing changes. So I'll go back to GitHub Actions. I'll see the add first job. That commit has triggered a workflow run, but that failed too. It says, okay, we have a job called first job, but no steps are defined for that job. So we need to define steps. So I'll go down, put in a steps array, and in other videos we'll show you other steps that you can do, but just to keep things simple, I will use the run step that allows me to run a command within the current agent. So I want to build a node project. So if I go to my local machine, I'm just going to test which version of node do I have running. Node version. And which version of npm do I have running? npm version. So 12.18.4 is the version of node that I have running. I'm going to do the same thing in my workflow. So I'll say node version and npm version. Save this. Check node and npm versions will be my commit message. Commit that and push it to GitHub. Again, synchronizing the changes. And then if we go to our actions, we'll see that, it failed again. Well, now why did it fail this time? It says we need to tell it using the run zone property what type of agent we want to run this on. So this is where we decide the type of agent, whether it's a Windows agent, a Mac OS, or a Linux agent. I'm going to keep things simple. I'm going to run on Ubuntu, latest build that's available. So I'll commit that and push it to GitHub. So at this point, I should have enough if I want to go and run this workflow successfully for the first time. It looks like it's running. If I go in, we have a job queued up, first job. Let's get ready to start our workflow run. Just give it a second. And while that workflow runs starting, essentially what we're doing is we're taking the latest Ubuntu agent and checking the version of node npm to see if it matches up with the node npm versions we have locally. So there we go. Set up the job, ran the node version, ran the npm version. So npm is 6.14.8. That's a little bit newer than what we have. Node is version 14.15.0, which is a lot newer than what we have. So if we want to control the versions that are running, we can do that by specifying a container. So I can go create another property called container, and this is where I can specify container. Now I know there's a node container out there, and I can say get the node container that's tagged 12.18.4, so I don't have to worry about whether the agent has a newer version of node or not. So we'll do that. I'll say add container spec, commit it, and push. We'll go back to our actions. We see add container spec, trigger the workflow run. We go back to our first job. And at this point, if we go to hub.docker.com and search for node, we'll see that it's going to run a container with Node.js pre-installed for us. There's all sorts of tags that are supported. Specifically, we're running the 12.18.4 tags that actually give us a version that matches up with what I have locally. So we'll go back in. Looks like our first job is running. It's initializing the container right now, so it's actually pulling that node container from Docker Hub. And then once it's done pulling that node container, it's going to run within the context of that container. You'll see 6.14.6, 12.18.4. Everything matches up with what I have on my local machine. So if I'm deving within this container on my local machine, I'll be good to go because I know my build agent running in GitHub is running on the exact same versions.